become an influencer yourself, here's what works now. And we're talking about getting good traffic, getting booked on TV, booking paid speaking, booking consulting at companies.
This is Steve Atwell, and you're listening to Education Hackers. Today we have a man on the show who needs very little introduction to the podcasting community. I am very pleased to have Jared Easley with us. Jared is a happy husband, proud daddy, author, podcast host, has been featured on Entrepreneur.com and Huffington Post, and is a co-founder of the podcast movement. Jared, you must be a busy man. You were also a speaker at NMX recently. How do you juggle all the things you do and still have time for family?
Steve, I really appreciate you having me as a guest on your show. And to answer that question, I don't do everything myself. I have support. And like you mentioned, my family, I've got my wife who helps me out. I've got a team of people that I send work to, so I'm not trying to handle that all myself. So those are my team of virtual assistants. And then I collaborate as much as possible on projects with other people where we transfer some of the responsibility to the right folks who have certain skills and talents that I don't necessarily have. So while I try to leverage my strengths, I recognize that I don't have, I don't know everything. I'm not good at everything. And so it makes more sense to try to work with other people. So that's an encouragement to your listeners, Steve, is don't try to tackle everything yourself. When it makes sense, try to work with others and try to have other people help you.
Definitely not. I mean, I've fallen into the same trap and try to do everything myself. You can't be a webmaster, copywriter, video creator, course creator, presenter. I mean, there are some things you have to do because you just got to be there. But there are some things you can hand off. So it's nice to know what you can hand off, and there are people out there that you can hand off to. So that's good advice. That's excellent advice. And what do you like to do when you're not podcasting, speaking at special events, having group training sessions, etc.? How do you relax?
I like to spend time with my family. I have a 4-year-old daughter, so spending time with her is a blast because she just sees the world differently, and I have a lot of fun with that. So we live in South Florida. The weather's really nice here, so we get to go to the park, and we get to do a lot of stuff outside. And that really is my reset button, Steve. When I have that crazy day or that crazy week, spending time with her just renews the perspective and reminds me, okay, one day at a time, this is why I do it. I'm a spiritual person, so I really practice my faith, and I feel like that plays a big part in this too. And just friends and community, and then I watch TV. I love reality shows, and you and I kind of talked about this for a minute beforehand, but my wife and I like reality shows like Survivor and some cooking shows like MasterChef and Hell's Kitchen. I've actually been able to have some of those people that have been on those shows be a guest on my podcast. And so that's kind of a geek moment for me to be able to interview folks that my wife and I watch on TV. But yeah, I really believe in family and community. So that's, again, it's so easy to get sucked into this digital space and just be focused on the online relationships, but the offline connections are really a great way to reset and just kind of remind yourself of what's important.
Yeah, reality shows. I didn't realize Survivor was still on. I think they have various versions of it. There was one in Australia, I think, and one in the U.S. and pretty cool show, actually.
It's one of my favorites. One of my bucket list goals is to be on that show. So I don't know how that'll ever happen, but that's something I'm interested in. So we had a speaker at our podcast movement event who was on Survivor 2 different seasons. So I need to start talking to him some more.
Wow. Put it on the list. Send your application off.
It doesn't hurt. I mean, all you're going to do is say no, right? I mean, worst case.
Exactly. I mean, this is what we say to anybody starting a business. What's the worst that can happen? Well, you just don't succeed, but at least you tried. And once you tried and you failed, you can learn from it, and maybe next time you will succeed. You
know what, Steve? If I ever get on this show, I'm going to be like, Steve pushed me. That's what I'll say. Steve pushed me.
Go for it. As soon as you get off, send off your application.
All right.
So you also created a podcast called Starve the Doubts. A brilliant name, by the way. We all have doubts, and they hold us back from achieving great things. What were some of your doubts, and how did you starve those? You didn't go on a special diet, did you?
I did the slow carb podcast diet. No, I when I was starting out the podcast, I thought it was going to be really expensive to do. I'd actually invested about $1,000 into taking a class, an online class with a gentleman who had a great reputation for teaching podcasting. And the second day of that class, I mean, this was a sacrifice for me. I had, to get permission from my wife to spend that much money on something that was a hobby at that moment was not, probably not the best move, but I got her permission. I went and invested. And the second day, the topic was audio hardware and how you have to have this good audio hardware in order to have really good quality, because people will judge you on that if they don't know who you are. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But at the time, this person said, hey, by the way, here's my hardware package, all affiliate links. And the price to have quote unquote good audio was like thousands of dollars. And I was thinking, okay, I'm probably not going to podcast because this is going to be something that's going to be way too expensive for me to get into. And I believed that, Steve, for about 9 months until I found this Audio Technica mic, which anybody could go and buy on Amazon for probably about $50 US or less. And the quality is good enough and great in comparison to, spending a lot of money for hardware on something that's not proven, right? I mean, it makes sense if you've got an established podcast, you want to continue to upgrade your audio. But when you're starting out and it's just a hobby and there's no guarantee you're going to have any listeners or any money, finding an inexpensive mic that has good quality is probably the best way to go. So when I found out about that mic 9 months later, that's what really compelled me to get started with podcasting. And then I had a lot of other doubt come along the way, Steve, like who's going to actually listen to this show? And for the first few months, I launched a show and almost nobody listened. And that was so discouraging. I practically quit. And finally, I had a lady send me an email, and that email was an email of encouragement. It came at the right time. It was that day before I was about to just pull the plug and stop, because I didn't really think it was making an impact or that it made any sense, and it was taking too much time. And that email encouraged me to start reconsidering what I was doing with the show. And from that point on, I refocused and decided I was going to focus on other people, focus on the people that I wanted to speak to in the podcast. And yeah, I just started noticing other people. And since then, I've written a book called Podcasting Good to Great, How to Grow Your Audience Through Collaboration. And the purpose of that book was sharing different strategies I've seen other podcasters use, and then some things that I've learned that really helped in growing an audience, not just contriving numbers or tweeting hashtags or whatever. This is legitimately working with other people and growing your podcast audience. So yeah, I had a lot of doubt, and I still do to this day. Is something going to work? Is something going to sell? Is something going to make sense? And, you just don't know those things unless you get in the game. No one wins unless you get in the game. So for the person out there who struggles, I relate to that. I understand that. And I would encourage you to get good advice. Make sure you're talking to people that you trust, that want to see you win. Continue to take steps, even though it's a challenge. It's the only way that you're going to learn what's the right step and what isn't. And then when you make a wrong step, you just change it and you make a pivot and a shift. And Steve, you know all about that. You've had to do that too. Oh,
for sure. I've had so many doubts. I waited too long to start this podcast. My biggest thing, my background is technology, by the way. I've been in tech for a very, very long time. And I have no issue talking to people. I can go to Starbucks and I can sit there for hours and talk to somebody and pass on some advice. And anytime I talk to somebody, they say, oh, I learned something new. Thank you so much. But, sitting in front of this microphone and talking to somebody on the other side of North America or the world or wherever, it's a little different. And especially when you're recording and you're thinking, wow, all these people are going to be listening to me. So these doubts start creeping in. So that kind of held me back for a long time. And finally I said, screw it. I'm just going to do this. And you become better as you do it. It's funny. You start recording, you hit the record button, and as you do it, you become better. You become more comfortable. You forget about the mic. You talk. It's like you're talking to that person, and they're sitting right in front of you. You get to this point where you just do it, and that's the key thing. You got to do it, and you got to do it. You got to see where it leads you. If you don't succeed as much as you thought you would, just learn from it and find out how you can improve things. So just do it. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I've ever had. You just go ahead and try it.
Oh, that's well said.
Let's take a look for a second at where you went from your podcast. You created this online course. It's more a training. What led you to create your Stop Chasing Influencers? How did you determine there was a need for this?
Before Stop Chasing Influencers, I've got a business partner named Dan, and Dan and I, we tried something that we thought would work. we put together an online membership site, and we used MemberPress for the plugin, and we used Wistia to host the videos, and I don't even remember all the technical stuff. We were all excited about it. We were using, I think, ClickFunnels to market and create the sales funnel, and we were having success with it. We had people sign up, and it was making money, Steve, and it was great. It was a lot of work, but it was making money. But it wasn't making a lot of money, but it never lost money, Steve. And then we eventually got to a point where we were serving the people in the beta group that were in this membership site. And we realized that in order to take that site and really improve it and make it something even more valuable, the work that it was going to take wasn't necessarily worth the money that we were making on it. And we decided, and it was a tough decision, Steve. We made the decision to cut bait, and so we wrote all the people that were in the beta group for that membership site, and we told them we were canceling and that we weren't going to charge them anymore, and that they'd have lifetime access to it, or as long as we kept the site up. And we had an online event, a business podcaster summit we're doing in January of 2015. So everyone in that membership site, we gave them just a free pass to that event that we're going to do. And we just cut bait. And I remember sending those emails and just, I had that terrible feeling in my stomach, like, man, this is no fun. You create something, people wanted it, they're spending money on it, but you realize it's too much work for what you're getting in return. And it felt like a failure, and that was discouraging. And so we tried everything that we thought was right. We saw minimal success, but it wasn't sustainable, if that makes sense, Steve. So moving forward, another friend of mine, Kamanzi Constable, he's just a fantastic writer. He went from being a bread truck driver to losing 170 pounds, and he started writing, and nobody read his stuff when he first started, and he put out a book. Nobody bought it. And so he dedicated a year or two of his life to just really learning that process and learning that skill. And then you fast forward, he put out another book that sold over 40,000 copies, self-published, and he got a traditional published deal. He ended up selling more than 80,000 books total. The guy is now writing for Huffington Post and, some of these big sites. He's an editor for Goodman Project. He approached me because he had been a guest on the podcast, and he's like, hey, let's write a book together. Let's write a book on this idea called Stop Chasing Influencers. And I'm sure you've seen this, Steve, in this space, in the online world, it's real easy to take the advice, which is not bad advice, by the way. Take the advice of look at what the big boys are doing and then kind of make it your own. And that's great. But for an online business owner, what could happen, and unfortunately does happen for some people, is they get so focused on the influencers that they're not actually building their business. They're not actually growing their business. They're just going from one thing to the next that these influencers tell them to do, and they're not really making progress on what they're doing. So we put together a book. We wrote it in a short amount of time, probably less than 3 months, and we've submitted that to a publisher. We're hoping that'll get published. But in the meantime, as the word got out that we were writing this book, and as we were having more and more conversations, people realized that, hey, that resonates with me. I want to be a part of that. I want to support that. So we decided, hey, let's go ahead and let's do a course, Steve, a course. Well, I like Kamanji's strategy because he comes back to me and says, a course is fine. We could build a course and do all this, but why don't instead, in the beginning, why don't we just do something real basic? The minimum viable product, Steve. I know you've heard about that. There's, you hear that term out there, especially with tech startups and stuff. And so we decided what would be the minimum viable product. Well, the minimum viable product would be a class, just teaching a class. And there's so many different ways to do that, with Google Hangout or with Uber Conference, or there's lots of different online conferencing options, and a lot of them are free and really easy to use. And so we decided, okay, let's just keep this as simple as possible. Let's not overthink it. Let's not get fancy. We put up a very, very basic WordPress page. And, basically a way for someone to pay for this. We wrote out what it is. Here's what you can expect if you sign up for this. We did a little Google Hangout video that's on the sales page. It's nothing glamorous. It's nothing over the top. We put it out there, and in the first day, we had 7 people pay and sign up for this. And it was interesting, Steve, because it was counterintuitive. It's like you hear all this good advice, and it is good advice to be polished and to have this great site that looks really good and that's really appealing, and to have these different tools in place. And in so many cases that makes sense. But my encouragement today is for the listeners saying, I'm not overly technical, or I don't have the time right out of the gate to put together all of this stuff for a site that I don't know is going to sell. I don't know people are going to buy it. So I would encourage your listeners, Steve, to consider adapting that strategy of marketing before they manufacture. And that could be as simple as putting up an Eventbrite page, for example, for your course idea. And you put up a free Eventbrite page, and you just say, hey, who wants to buy this? Here's the idea. Now, if you do that and people actually buy it, you need to have integrity. You need to actually build the course or create the class. But what we're doing is a low-hanging fruit option, Steve. It's not the perfect option. It's not for everyone. I get it. But for that person who's listening, who's juggling so many things, and they want to test an idea, they don't want to go all in on something right out of the gate. They want to keep it very simple, keep it basic. They can do that. They could do an Eventbrite page, and then if people pay for it, then they could do a free conference call. And that's what we're using, freeconferencecall.com. And we're going to have 3 different weeks where people call in. And of course, afterward, they'll have access to the audio recordings. They'll have access to PDFs and things of that nature. We're using also a private Facebook group, which seems to be more and more standard with courses and classes. But we intentionally kept this very simple, and the feedback we've gotten so far, Steve, is people really like it. They can relate to it. They look at the site, they look at what we're doing and saying, hey, that you're making me believe that I can do this too. And that's a cool thing to make your students feel that way.
You covered quite a bit there. Let's go over some of those things. You just said that you got to start. I mean, coming back to just starting. And you can mull about it. You can buy all these products that are supposed to help you. And a lot of these products are designed to simplify creating a website or simplify marketing the actual product that you're creating. But step back and actually create your product first. So we get hung up on all these tools, and we buy these tools before we actually need them. So that's great advice. You got to actually create your product before you can start looking at how you're going to market it, how you're going to present it, taking advice about creating an event to see if there is a need for that product or service or course or whatever it is that you're creating. That's a really good piece of advice there. Having covered all that stuff there, that's step back for a second and give us a bird's eye view of your course before we dive into it. Who is it for? Why should people be signing up for it?
The course is for the person who is wanting to do an online business or wanting to grow that online business. And they want to know what's working in 2015. They want to know what's working for the little guy. There's a lot of advice out there, Steve. That's great advice, but it's great advice if you've got, 30, 40,000 people on your email list. When you're new, you don't have that. So, so while I'm kudos to the internet marketers and the folks out there who got these massive lists and they're having those results, the little guy can't relate to that. They're not there yet. And so if you're not there yet, you got to learn some other things. You got to learn what works for the little guy. So that's what this course is all about. It's called Stop Chasing Influencers, but it's not stabbing at influencers. It's basically saying, become an influencer yourself. Here's what works now. And we're talking about getting good traffic, getting booked on TV, booking paid speaking, booking consulting at companies. Like, it's very lucrative, building a top-rated podcast, how to transition out of your day job if you're in a day job. Those are topics that we're covering throughout this process. And we're doing 3 primary live group calls. And in addition to that, we're also going to do some pre-recorded calls that will be available to the group. But the focus will be the 3 group strategy calls, and they're all phone calls because everybody can use a phone. And we again, that was intentional, as some people, don't have fancy setups to do webcam and video and we wanted to make this just as simple as picking up a phone and dialing a phone number. And that's exactly what it is. Anybody could be on their phone, walking out in their neighborhood if the weather's nice, or being on the treadmill indoors in Canada, right, Steve? And they could be on this call listening or participating if they choose. And we wanted to really interact and get to know the people that are paying money and supporting this and wanting to be a part of this, and just make sure we can help them and provide as much value to them as possible. So the calls give us a chance to actually interact with them and talk with them, in addition to the Facebook group where we're posting stuff on a regular basis. People are commenting, responding, they're posting. So right now it's like a little family. It's like a little community, and it's been great. So the week one is primarily foundation stuff, talking about websites and email lists and autoresponders and social media. And then week two is growth, and basically how are you building traffic and email subscribers, and taking exposure through writing and podcasting and video, just stuff like that. And then week three is basically making money. How am I going to make money doing this? And how am I going to transition if I'm in a day job? So that's extremely vague and very high end, but that's more or less what it is. I mean, the website's stopchasinginfluencers.com.
You seem to be covering quite a lot of stuff there. 3 1.5 hour sessions.
Yeah.
That's, 4.5 hours. And you're covering quite a bit of stuff. Getting traffic, getting booked on TV, booking paid speaking, booking consulting at companies, building a top-rated podcast, and how to get out of your day job.
Well, now, in fairness, too, to try to cover all that is not realistic in just those calls. So we're not just offering just the calls. We're also offering pre-recorded content as well, and those are also phone calls. But we are having everything covered and then available through the calls, the live calls, and then through the WordPress page. So,
and you have a private forum.
Yeah, which is just a Facebook group, which anybody could start. Anybody can go do a Facebook group and offer that as a kind of a bonus add to your course or your class. So that's what we have currently, and so far so good. I mean, we have almost 20 people that have paid money to be a part of what we're doing. And
your homework, you have assignments. How are you checking these assignments?
That's all through the Facebook group. So we strategically have homework, and then people throughout different aspects of the homework, we're saying, hey, what do you think about this, or what's your answer to this, and then go into the Facebook group and answer this question. And what that does is that increases the engagement, and it increases the likelihood of them saying, okay, I'm stuck on this. What do you think? What's your advice? But it's promoting that community and promoting that conversation. So yeah, we do have homework, but it's also intended to go back to the Facebook group and then also save questions for the calls as well. We haven't actually started the live call. Our first live call as of this recording is going to be this week. So
are you grading these assignments? Are you giving an A+ to somebody and a D- to somebody else?
I don't think it's quite that intense. I think we are providing feedback. We are helping, but it's not grading presents. And the people that are involved in this that have signed up, they're from all different types of backgrounds. So it's interesting. I mean, not everybody's in the same spot. So some of the feedback's going to be different for the person who's, doesn't have a website versus someone who's trying to book speaking to talk about domestic abuse or something like that. I mean, those are just random examples, but you get the idea.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of stuff to cover. It's good that you have the Facebook group, because then people can actually talk to each other and help each other. And that's what I like. I have a Facebook group, Podcast is Tech Talk. And the biggest thing I like in my group is when somebody steps up and tries to help somebody else. So I think that should be part of any group. Looking back now, I mean, you've created this course or online training. What was the biggest mistake that you think you made when you started creating this?
I shared with you earlier what we did with the membership site. And I don't think that was necessarily a mistake, but what we learned is, sometimes you have a great idea and you build it, but then you can't sustain it. And then what are you going to do? You're going to drag it out, or you're going to cut bait. So when you do run into those situations and you realize you got to make some changes, don't be afraid to make those changes, and don't be afraid to communicate that too. I mean, I had to send personal emails to everyone in that membership site telling them what was happening, that we were shutting it down and why we were doing it and what value we were trying to provide for them while we're shutting down the site. Here's what we want to give you in exchange as a thank you. So I think you just try to be as considerate as possible if you're dealing with people who've paid money, and try to make sure you're leaving them with as much valuable as possible. In terms of the free call stuff, my advice there is you mentioned, okay, there's a lot of material, and that's true, but it's not just me. It's me and my business partner, Kamanzi. So the two of us have divvied up different responsibilities, going back to what you mentioned earlier in the podcast. So that's another takeaway I hope for your listeners is try not to do everything yourself. It might make more sense to do a course in conjunction with someone else where it will increase the visibility and likely increase the people that sign up. And okay, maybe you're splitting the fees or you're coming up with some kind of share on the money, but you might be making more money if it was just you, if you're bringing in the right person. So those are all things, to consider. My advice is don't ever try to do everything all yourself, and, do your best to treat people like they want to be treated. Treat them, with respect, and try to communicate with them what's going on. And most people understand and they appreciate that.
Great advice. So let's take a look at the way that you created this course. Did you have a workflow when you created this online training? How long did it take you from start to finish to put it all together?
Okay, so the workflow or the outline is from the book. So we had written a book already, which we've submitted that to a publisher now and hopefully getting approved for that. So we already had the outline, we already had the structure, and then it was basically saying, how do we test this? How do we put this out there to see if people actually spend money in a class? And that's going back to what we described earlier, where we did the minimum viable product. Let's just teach a class through phone conversations and through pre-recordings that are very, very simple, very, very basic, but anyone can connect with, and anybody can listen to, anybody can participate. And so, we started simple. We had a very, very basic WordPress page, or, we talked about Eventbrite earlier. If you want to do Eventbrite, told everybody, hey, this is available. You can sign up for this. And we did that through social media. We did that on the podcast. We even did a free call, Steve, using freeconferencecall.com. We put out a free call, promoted that, said, hey, join us for this free call. At the end of the free call, we said, by the way, we have this class that we're offering. And we had people sign up through that as well. So, we tried different things. Not everything was perfect, but we had enough people raise their hand and pay money that now we're moving forward, and we're kind of building it as we go. So while we have the initial workflow or framework, as you said, we now are building it. So each week we know what we're going to talk about, and then we're going through the process and talking about it, and we're going through the group and getting feedback from them. So if we ever offer this class again, let's say in another month or two, we have all this experience from the first class and the feedback from the first group to continue to tweak and tailor the next class, make it even better, if that makes sense. So the strategy is, will people commit? Once they commit, having communication with them, making sure you understand what they're wanting to get out of it, and then adapting that to your existing outline or framework, and then continue to rinse and repeat. Keep doing that. Make sure you're delivering what you're saying you're going to deliver, but constantly get that feedback. And that's why that Facebook group is so valuable, is we're constantly hearing from people as they go through this process, and we know, okay, hey, this is good. We want to consider using that for next week, or we want to consider using that for the next class that we do if we do another one.
I think being open about what you're doing, your ideas and so on, is so critical to that. Because a lot of times people are very protective of their ideas. They might think, oh, well, if I share my idea or my concept or what I'm doing, somebody else might take it and run with it. Being open to feedback and then taking that feedback and applying it, that is very important. And I think, having that Facebook group, providing that feedback is very valuable. It's more valuable than a lot of things that we read or hear about, just having that interaction. One of the questions I do have, though, is when I talk to people and I talk about online courses and online training, and say this becomes really, really popular, and you have lots and lots of people wanting to sign up for your training, how do you plan to scale up?
Okay, well, the good news is if that happens, and it's likely that it could, then that's when you take your proof of concept, which is people paying you money, people giving you feedback, and this minimum viable product, which is just phone calls and Facebook group interaction, and you're growing that into a full-on course where you're making videos and hosting them with Wistia and, doing some of the more detail and technical things that you talk about on the show, Steve, that you've learned from different guests. You're applying those principles at that point where you can make a passive income site where people can sign up and go through different courses, and as many people can sign up as they want to. And then it's up to you if you want to offer Q&A calls or offer some kind of more personal interaction as an upgrade or a higher tier in the pricing. So I don't think that is the concern or should be the concern of someone starting a course in the very beginning. I think it's a wonderful problem to have, to need to scale, but until you have that problem, focus on the basics. Get the basics down, get the proof of concept. Once you have that, then you can determine, all right, how do I make this for the masses? But in the beginning, you're not likely to have the masses. So if you don't have the masses, just nail it down with a few people who are gracious enough to support it and participate and go through that process and learn from them, give them what they have paid for. And then if you have success, you look at taking it to, another level and growing it from there. So for us, that would be a full-on course where people are paying and going through video tutorials and things of that nature. And we would know exactly what to do and how to do that based on the success of the minimum viable product group, the beta group, if you will.
Having that live interaction and being in touch with your audience, that is very critical, and that's very, very good when you're starting out, because people want to see you, they want to hear you, they want to talk to you live, and having that interaction is going to take you a lot further, I think, a lot of times than just putting something online and then hoping that somebody buys it. Although it depends on what it is, obviously, but people do want to get to know you. So I think what you're doing is great. It's a great way to start. And if you have that problem where you have thousands and thousands of people wanting to sign up, it's a good problem to have. Let's talk about a little bit about the tech side of your delivery mechanism for your training. We won't get into too much tech because, I just want to touch on a couple of things. I just want to give a brief overview and find out how you're doing this. You're recording your video conference calls.
Most conference call softwares offer that feature, and they'll just provide you with an MP3 at the end of a call. So free conference calls, you just basically hit a record button and then it produces that MP3 once the call is completed. And it's the same thing if you were to use an Uber conference, and some people are familiar with Google Hangouts on Air, except that's not audio, that's just a video. But we're just taking that audio file once we have it. And I have a SoundCloud account. I use SoundCloud with my podcast. But even if you didn't have a podcast, you could use something like SoundCloud where you could upload that audio. You could make it private or you could make it public. It's completely up to you. And then you could take that just like a YouTube video, and you embed that into a WordPress page. You can embed a SoundCloud audio file into a WordPress page as well. So that's what we're doing. We just upload it to WordPress, and then we paste it in, we upload it to SoundCloud and then paste it into WordPress.
And how are you protecting your content?
Content is just behind, a password page at this point. And then we're also doing it within the Facebook group. And this is very bare minimum basic stuff. So like Google Docs, things like that. This is not that complicated. People could potentially hack into it, but in the beginning, we're just not worried about that. It's more about, do we have a proof that people want this, and then focusing on those people. And then over time, like you said, as we grow, then we can become more secure and be smarter about it. But in the beginning, it's just, basic, keep it easy.
It's funny you talk about Google Docs and Google Drive, because my last interview, and they were doing the same thing. Share out a link on Google Drive, and that once somebody has that link, it's easy to share it out with other people. What payment system did you end up using? Are you using PayPal?
Yeah, we're using PayPal, and yeah, I think right now it's just PayPal. So. And I'm actually not handling that part. That's my business partner's part. But yeah, we kept that as simple as possible too. Literally, it's just a buy now button, and you just use PayPal. But like I said, if for someone who's listening is like, man, I'm new at this, I don't know how to do this. You could just use Eventbrite. Eventbrite could do that for you.
For setting up events, they handle everything basically: the date, the time, the payment method, and you just set it up and you're ready to go. As long as you got your free conference call or Google Hangouts or whatever you're using set up, you're ready to go. How do you market the course? What's been most successful for you? Are you marketing on your podcast?
We've done a podcast episode dedicated to it. We've also I've got a email list with my podcast, and the person I'm doing the class with has a blog. He has an email list as well. So we've connected with those email lists saying, hey, this is an opportunity. And yeah, then it's just some social media awareness, telling people about it. But I think what's been the biggest draw, in addition to those things, which have worked and they've been fine, is we've had our people who've actually registered and paid money. They then go out and say, hey, I'm excited about this. And they're sharing it with their community. And that's not necessarily something we're asking them to do or pressuring them to do. They just go out and do that because they're looking forward to it. And then that gets more people asking the questions, well, what's this about, and visiting the site. And we've had a few people sign up just as referrals that way.
Yeah, word of mouth. You can't beat word of mouth. That's the best kind of advertising, and that's what you want. You want people talking about your course, your training, your product, whatever it is. Word of mouth is the best thing. What's your best, most practical advice to anybody thinking of creating their first online course or training?
I think the first thing is don't overthink it. It's so easy to overthink it. And Steve, you said something so important that I hope people picked up on is there's a lot of tools. Don't allow yourself to get so focused on tools that you're not actually growing a course, right? Or creating a course that people want to buy. I think the idea of marketing before you manufacture is so smart. You put it out there, a basic sales page in WordPress or a basic Eventbrite page or whatever method you use, and then you promote it. And if people pay you money, they actually give you money, then you build it. And again, I know that seems a little counterintuitive for some folks, but you're limiting your risk that way. You're not going out and creating hours and hours of content that you're just convinced people are going to buy, and then almost nobody buys it. Where on the other hand, if you promote something and say, do you want this? And they do, then you can get their feedback and you can go and build it. And I mean, that requires that you have integrity. If you don't have integrity, this strategy is not the right one for you. But find out what people want, put up that sales page. If they pay you money, get their feedback, and then just go and create it. And it could be as simple as conference calls in a Facebook group. Don't ever overthink it. But if you do want to be fancy and take a lot of the advice you're learning from this podcast, and you should, because there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. You want to present yourself in a certain way. I get it. Make sure that you at first know that the market wants what you're putting out there. And instead of spending all this time creating something that no one's purchased yet, try to get them to purchase it first. I think that's going to save you lots of time and money and headaches.
Jared, I could ask you 100 more questions, but you're a busy man. I want to thank you so much for being on the show. It has been a real pleasure speaking with you. Where can people reach you online?
Steve, the course is stopchasinginfluencers.com, if that interests you. And then, of course, there's a podcast, and it's starvethedoubts.com. And we also are doing a podcasting conference. It's the only one that's international, that's by podcasters, for podcasters. I mean, it's a really big deal. It's podcast movement, and I definitely encourage anyone who's interested in podcasting to check that out at podcastmovement.com.
And there you have it, Jared Easley, a man at large who's out there like Superman, fighting the good cause to spread the word about podcasting, helping you starve your doubts and stop you from chasing influencers so you can become one yourself. Check out the show notes and you'll find all the links we talked about in there. Until next time, guys, take care.
Steve, thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, just subscribe to the podcast and future episodes will be downloaded automatically for you. Check out the show notes at educationhackers.com to get links to resources we talked about in this episode. See you next time.